Hi there, welcome back to Daily Flash. I'm Andrea Jackson. Move over politics. There are two more words more important than Trump and Harris right now. There is a certain moment in an economy that could change everything going forward, no matter who is in office. It's called the Minsky moment. Here to talk about it is Akin Oyedele, deputy editor for Business Insider. Akin, welcome to Daily Flash.
Thanks for having me.
So, in simple terms, what is a Minsky moment to someone who might be unfamiliar with the phrase?
So it's named after an economist named Hyman Minsky, and what he was capturing was really a time when a prolonged period of prosperity and financial stability suddenly turns into a financial crisis, and that turns south from what was think of it like say you're out at a party, a house party, and everything's good, the alcohol is flowing, everyone's dancing, the DJ is on point, and then the cops show up, and it's like, well, everyone has to leave because the neighbors are complaining. That sudden turn, and from what was a good time to a bad time, but in economic time, in terms, of course, is what the Minsky moment is.
So, what are some of the warning signs or stages that indicate a market is moving toward a Minsky moment?
So Minsky came up with three phases or stages of leading up to the Minsky moment. The first is what he calls a hedge finance stage. In that stage, things are stable, borrowers are careful, people are managing their debt in a responsible way, they're paying back their loans on time, everything's pretty stable. And then from the hedge finance stage, we go to the speculative finance stage. And that's when because things are good, people start to feel like they can take on more and more risk, and so they start to borrow more. You start to see people being okay with like some extra interest on their loans, and they're paying only, um, the minimum payments. Or they start to take on risks and hope to refinance later, or they start to sort of rely on the promise of uh, asset prices rising so that they can afford their lifestyles. And then in the final stage, what he calls the Ponzi finance stage, that's the riskiest phase. This is when people are so overextended that they can't afford to pay their debts anymore, and that's really when the red flag starts to wave, and is a sign that a Minsky moment might be near.
So, how do Minsky theories anticipate the financial crisis, especially thinking back to, let's say, 2008?
Yeah, so 2008, is like a perfect example of a Minsky moment because what we had was a long period of stability in the housing market. Prices were stable, rising but stable in a responsible manner. And then you started to see people take on more and more debt, and banks, also extend debt to people who maybe under normal circumstances wouldn't have qualified credit wise. And banks lent money easily, assuming that people will be able to pay, or assuming that house prices would rise, and that would compensate for it. And so, when prices all of a sudden fell unexpectedly, that triggered a wave of what we saw. So, Minsky is, one of the people who's credited with calling the financial crisis, precisely because his theory explains how, that sort of ever increasing level of risk taking eventually crosses the threshold where it's so high that the whole house of cards collapses.
I like your party analogy. It's like we're staying at the party a little bit too long, right? Any current
Right.
trends in the market you see now that could suggest we might be heading toward another Minsky moment?
Yeah. So, if you'd asked me this in maybe 2021 or 22, it would have been a lot easier to point that out because, interest rates are at zero. But something that comes to mind is still maybe was a bit more relevant than is cryptocurrencies or certain corners of the crypto market where, people are investing not because they see any utility to the particular crypto or the particular project, but because they are expecting that the line on the chart is going to keep going up. And that kind of risk taking, especially for people who maybe have done things like cash out a 401k, or take on debt, that could end up being ugly, both for the borrowers and for the projects, the crypto projects themselves. So that's one example.
Gotcha. Akin, thank you so much for sharing some information on this topic. For more information on the Minsky moment, head over to businessinsider.com.